Welcome to the Django project, djblogger. This tutorial is part of a YouTube Django project playlist, which you can access in the video description. You can watch the whole course from the very beginning. If you enjoyed this course and would like all the updated tutorials and associated code samples and more, you can check out this course and other courses this project features at Udemy. The link to the course is in the video description. So now we're going to move over to HTMX. If you haven't started to utilize, or even if you don't know what HTMX is, I do recommend going over to the website, HTMX website, and have a read through some of the documentation to get a general idea of what type of features that it offers. Now, ultimately, HTMX, as it describes itself, is a library that allows us to access modern browser features directly from HTML rather than using JavaScript. So instead, for example, of loading all of our posts in at once, you can see this page here, we've loaded all of our posts, at once. That can be a lot of data. Imagine all these images that need to be loaded from our server or onto this page. That can take a long time to load onto this page. So by breaking this up, for example, into smaller chunks and loading them as and when they're needed, that can improve the performance of our page here. So what we're going to do here, we're going to utilize HTMX and the technologies within to load or paginate, if you like, this section here of our website. So we load only 10 posts at a time. So when the user goes to this page, 10 of these posts are loaded. If or when they were to scroll down to the last post, what's going to happen is we're going to send a request to the database, to our server, to Django, and then return the next 10 posts. And that's going to happen indefinitely until we get to the end or when there are no posts left in our database. And now to do this, we are going to utilize the tools which essentially will come from Ajax, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So here we're using Ajax technology to essentially send a request to the server without reloading the page. And that's important, of course. We don't want to reload the page every time we want to add new data. We want it to look seamlessly. So when we scroll down, Ajax behind the scenes is going to send a request, if you like, to the server, grab that data, and then we're going to update this page here. So hopefully you've got a general understanding of what our goal is here, what we're going to try to achieve in this tutorial. Let's get back into our project. And let's go over to our templates. So djblogger templates and the blog templates. So here we have components and we have the index page. Let's just try and think about this first and work out the type of resources or what is or how we're going to achieve this. So the user scrolls down to say the 10th post. At that point, we're going to send a HTML Ajax request over to the server. That's going to grab some data from the database, and then we're going to return that here on the front page. And at that point, we need a way of them presenting that data. So we're going to need maybe some sort of template code, which can then be injected into our page and display that new data that's returned from the database. So let's go over to the components here. Let's grab a new file in our blog components. So that's in our templates here. Let's grab that and say post list elements. So this is going to be a separate component which is going to load in all of those posts. And then we can utilize that again potentially to then output the new data that's being returned as and when the user scrolls down. So let's go ahead and access our index as well. And we're going to now just move this across. So from the loop start to the end, I'm just going to remove that from the index. Move that from the index. And then I'm going to put it here in this new page here. And then in the index here, let's just go ahead and include that in. So we just need to include that new template now. So that's going to be in components. So from index, I need to go inside of the components folder. And then inside of there, we've got a new file now called post list elements.html. Okay, so let's just make sure that works. Now I do have the server running. So back into my page here, refresh, and you can see that everything is loaded nicely. Now you may notice that the image changes. That's just been generated from a service online. So every time I refresh, that's going to be a new image. So let's get back into our blog, djblogger blog, and then views. Inside of there, you can see that we have our single view at the moment, and that's the view that we currently use for our homepage. So built into Django is pagination features. So this is going to allow us to split up our data into multiple pages. But in this case, remember, we're not going to use traditional pagination in terms of you click on the next page and then you click on the next page. We're going to be utilizing AJAX to send requests and to grab that data, that next page data, if you like, and then return it back and display that directly on our page. So this is really just really simple to set up here in our class-based views. We simply just need to specify paginate by. And then we then specify, like you saw there, the integer that we need. So we're going to paginate by 10 posts. So every 10 posts, we're going to create a new page, if you like. So we're going to, in our case, we're going to display 10 posts. When the user gets down to that 10th post, we're then going to display the next 10 posts automatically, and the user can continue scrolling down the page. So now we have two questions that we need to solve. One, how do we get it so that when we get to the 10th post, we know how to load, we know then to load the next 10? And then secondly, how does Django know that we want to then load the next 10 pages? Okay, let's solve the first issue first, which is how do we know we need to trigger something when we get to the last post? Let's go back into our post elements here. So this represents a block. Remember, this represents one of these blocks. Every time we loop around and output data, it's going to make one of these blocks. So what we can do here, within HTMX, it provides us an option. It's called revealed. So this is a trigger that we can set. So if we go into search, revealed. Okay, so here we have revealed. So fires off, so it starts or runs once an element first scrolls into the viewport. So this is our viewport here, the page. So what we're saying here is that this tool here allows us to set this up. So as and when we scroll to a certain element, if this element has the property reveal property, it means it's going to fire off some code. Once this here, which has been tagged as revealed, gets into our viewport, our page. So as and when we scroll down, say one of these elements is going to be tagged as revealed, for example. Once it's on our page and it's viewable, it's then going to trigger the code to then load the next 10 posts. So the question is now, well, how do I actually get that to be on the last post that's outputted? That's the next question, right? So what we're going to need to do here then is just use some of the tools that Django provides. So within our loop, let's add a new component here. I don't know why I call them components. So if, for example, the for loop even, dot last. So what we can do is we can tell Django for the last item that's looped out, let's do something different. Okay, so let's finish this off with an else. So basically, when we loop through all the data, what's going to happen if and when it finds the last item that's being looped, we're going to do something slightly different. And what we're going to do, let's just remove this. So this needs to be outside of that. So this isn't dependent upon the last element. Okay, so this is the top component here, the top div or the outer div. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to put this inside this if here. So what's going to happen here then? If it is the last post, we're going to output a different div here. If it isn't the last, well then we're just going to continue using the normal div here. Okay, So let's first of all end this if. So end if. So apologies for maybe just embellishing on this a little bit, but hopefully you can see what's happening here. So we loop through all the posts. When we get to the last one, we detect it's the last one. We output this. Let's get rid of this end comment here. So that's the div, the outer div start. Now, if it isn't the last item, then we're just going to output the normal div here. So what we want to change here is we now want to add the trigger. So hx trigger equals, remember we're using revealed, R-E-V-E-A-L-E-D, revealed. Okay, so that means that we're going to tag this last post that gets looped out with the revealed property. So we can see this in action. If we refresh the page, we go down to the last post here, and the styling seems to have changed for some reason. Let's go ahead and inspect this last element here. Up a little bit, so down a little bit, just here. And you can see here that we have the hx trigger revealed. So that's then applied on this last post that's displayed in our list. Let's just quickly change the styling here. So I'm just going to take out the inScroll class here in the A tag. Let's just put this into the H1 here. And so I'm going to call this inScroll now title. Make sure I add that back in. So just to add that now, inScroll title there. I'm just going to change the styling. So our styling can be found in our static main. And remember we had this inScroll H1. So I'm just going to change that now to inScroll title, both there and in the media at media. So that should hopefully solve that little problem we have with the H1. No, it makes it worse. Okay. Oh no, there we go. So hard refreshed. You can see now we're working okay. It's working okay. Okay. Right, so now we need to deal with, or now we need to make a request. So when we get to the last post, we're going to need to make a request to then see the next 10 items. Now, what you've already noticed already is that there are only 10 now posts being displayed because we've set the pagination number in our view. So we're going to now create a hx get request. So let's close our styling there and let's go back into here. So this is going to be applied again only on the last element that gets outputted. So after hx trigger, we're now going to, or before that or after that, we're now going to apply a hx get. So this is going to perform an action. This is going to perform a HTMX Ajax request, if you like, over to the server and grab some more data. So this equals, so this is the action that we're going to perform. Now what we need to do here is simply to specify the URL to send the request and then add some additional information which correlates to how Django outputs and paginates data. So first up then, let's specify the resource we want to access. Now, what we're doing here is essentially we're sending a request to the home page again. So let's go into our URLs in our blog, and you can see that we've called this home page. So back in our element here, so we're going to then add a URL, and that's going to be home page. So we're going to grab the URL of our home page. Okay, let's just see if this is working. So I'll refresh the page again. So go back down here and I were to inspect this. Move this across. You can see here that hx get is just slash, referring to the home page. As a quick recap, we now have pagination activated on our view and we're only displaying 10 items. We've now set the last post to revealed so that it performs or activates or triggers something when we get to this last post. And we're then going to then set up hxget to then send an AJAX request to the server and grab some more data. So now we need a way within our view here of actually detecting that a request has been sent by our homepage and then give our homepage or send back the next 10 posts. So we're going to install the Django HTMX PyPy extension. That's going to give us a few different features, which is going to enable us to capture HTMX requests, and then we can perform an action based upon that. So let's go ahead and copy that. Let's go back to our project, open up our terminal, close the server, Control-C, clear that, and then don't do that, and then pip install Django HTMX. So let's get that installed. Right, so while we're here, before we forget, let's just make sure that we cd go back up a folder. Let's make sure that we pip freeze everything now. We've added some more extensions, pip freeze, and then requirements.txt, and then we change directory back into our djblogger, and then we're back into where the manage.py file is. Right, so now we have that extension installed, we should be able to now capture HTMX requests. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a template back to the home page whenever HTMX request has been made. Because remember, when we want more data, we also need a template to display that data. So what we can do here is we can override get template names. And what we can do is whenever a HTMX request is made, we can send back only the post list elements template. Remember, that's a template which is going to loop through all the posts and then output the data. So that's going to output or display the new data that's being requested. So get templates names self, and then basically, first of all, we're going to say if self.request.htmx. So what we're doing here is that whenever we send a HTMX request, behind the scenes within the request is some metadata which we can detect, in this case the HTMX information. If we can find that, that means that our homepage has triggered the HTMX code, which is in the end or the last item or the last post that's rendered, and then we can perform an additional task. So let's just go ahead and print something random. X. Okay. So let's just give this a go. So we're going to -3 manage.py. Let's just run the server. Okay. So let's go ahead and go over to our home page. Let's go to the top. Let's refresh. You can see that object has no attribute HTMX. Okay. Self-request HTMX. I'm doing something wrong here. Back in the views, let's just make sure that we return our template as per normal, which is going to be in the DJ, oh actually, it's going to be in blog index. So what we can do now, because we've overridden the get template names, we can remove our template name now. Okay, so we're going to return blog index.html. There are two steps that we missed. Apologies, I didn't really put this in a very good order, but in order for us to actually install the Django HTMX extension, there are three things that we need to do. First of all, install, as we have already seen. Secondly, we need to add it to our settings. So go over to djblogger settings and then our base. So we need to add that in. And then the last component is that we need to add it to our middleware. If it was a little bit strange how I introduced all of this, then head over to the Django HTMX documentation. You'll be able to see the 3-step guide here. So I'm going to just install the middleware, just add it at the bottom here. And then we can now start to actually extract or see the HTMX within our requests. So if we go back into our views, let's close that. So djblogger blog, our views. So we now would be able to capture the request if it is a HTMX request, and we'll go ahead and just print out XXX. We don't need that for now. So we're going to return the normal template if not. So let's just get rid of that. Let's give this a go. Right, so let's spin up our server. And let's go ahead and refresh our page, and there we go. So the point being now is that when we scroll down to the bottom, now obviously the last component here has been triggered. And so what we should have now is we should have printed out XXX. So let's just double check the templates. I may have made a change to them. Inside a blog, we've got components. Let's just make sure this has been added. So it looks like I've removed the HTMX for some reason. So remember, we've got two properties here, the hx get, and then we added the hx trigger revealed. I'm not too sure why I removed that. So let's just try this again. So I'll refresh the page, go down to the bottom, and you can see at the moment, you can see that it's just dripping out at the moment in actual fact. So let's go back and you can see that we have actually outputted. So it does look like our if statement here is working. So what we need to do now is we need to swap this. So whenever we get down to the end here, what we want to do, of course, is to output our template. So to do that, let's go ahead and return, and then we're going to return the templates of blog slash components. So we're referring to the template folder here. So blog slash components slash, and then the post list elements.html. Okay, so let's get back into our home page. Just refresh again. Okay, so when we get down to the bottom here, you can see that it's starting to, it's a little bit strange. It looks like it's looping forever there. So it's not quite ready yet. So let's get back into the code and finish this off. So what's happening behind the scenes here is that Django is paginating our data in increments of 10. Now to access that, typically we would pass in a page parameter and tell Django what page we wanted. So if we had 100 posts and we collected those and we separated them up into tens, we would say page 1 is post 1 to 10, page 2 is post, and so on and so on. So we're just breaking this up into 10 posts at a time. So what we need to do is that when we send a request for the next lot of posts, we need to specify the page number that we want to get. So the first page is page 1, that's the first 10. And then when we get down to the bottom of that, when we make our request, we then want page 2. So what we're going to need to do here then in our request is to specify what page we want to return. So we're going to extend this, and then we're going to specify what page we want to get. So here we're going to say page object number. So we're going to pass in the page number. Now, what we want to do every time we output is we want to increment that page number so that we can get the next page. So let's use our pipe, and then let's add 1. So basically, every time we get to the last element, it's going to add 1. So the first 10 is going to load. The last element is going to have page 1. Then we load the next lot. That's going to have page 2, and so on and so on. So when we trigger it, it's always going to get the next page. So to put that in place, okay, I think that's now sorted. Right. So there's some other properties attributes that we need to add here. So we need to, for example, include the hx swap. So we need to set this to after end. So here we're just simply specifying where we want to place our new code. So you can see here swapping, we can put the code inner HTML, outer HTML, after the beginning, before the beginning, and so on and so on. So here essentially we're offering different, HTMX here is offering different ways to return the data and to actually kind of load it into our page. So with that in place, we're now ready to give this a go. So let's refresh our page. Right, so we get down to the first 10. And you can see the scroll bar was navigated or moved up, indicating that we've got another 10 posts. And now we have another 10 posts. And now we have another 10 posts. And that's going to happen all the way down. Remember, in the previous tutorial, we added 100 posts. You can add some more if you like. And that's going to keep happening all the way, hopefully, to the end. Or forever, in this case. Now let's take a look at why that is. What we saw there is that we were looping through our data forever, but you may have noticed that the data that was outputting again was exactly the same. And if we inspect the server log here, you can see that we're requesting the same page. So we get the first page, we get down to the first 10, and then we request more data. And you can see each time we're getting the same page. So we're just returning page 2 forever. So let's go back into line 4 here in our post list elements, and notice what we didn't specify is equal. So we simply weren't adding the number correctly. So let's give this a go now. We'll refresh the page again, and let's get back down to the bottom, scroll it a few times, and then we'll have a look again. You can now see this time we are indeed collecting the correct page number. So what should happen eventually, we've only got 100 posts. We should be able to get down to the bottom. And there we go. So we're down at the bottom here. So that wasn't the smoothest tutorial, but hopefully you're getting a general sense, an idea of now how to apply that within your code. Now I did try to generate some errors here to give us a better view or deeper view into how to maybe debug when there are errors, because you're bound to have an error. You're bound to type in incorrectly now and then. So I think it's good to see how potentially you can resolve those problems.